All right, the next couple of chapters in the book are about the process in which we, as the database designers and developers, take to figure out what we're going to build, what the database has to look like, how the customer is going to use it, all that kind of stuff. I think the book spends an awful lot of time on this. Interestingly to me, it's the actual process of working with people and talking to people. It gives you an end-to-end approach on kind of what that looks like. It's not really talking about how we design the database yet. That comes soon. But I think there's at least two chapters on this kind of process in which we do things. So we did the quiz. As we go through this process, we'll use the case study that they use.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think it's recording.
No, the Zoom is not recording.
Oh, okay.
I'm recording it separately because I hate the Zoom recordings. They're awful.
Got it.
But thank you. No, I'm glad you called that out. All right. So the book goes through a use case or a case study of Mike's Bikes or something like that. And we'll just step through that as well. Today we're going to talk about how we go through the steps of having these interviews and discovery sessions of what something looks like. The reason this is important is it's building the muscle for you as someone who needs to build something on behalf of someone else. It helps you build those muscles on building that relationship. And if I have learned anything in 20 years of my career, relationships are more important than technical knowledge. And so that is the good reason for having this in the book as detailed as it is. It'll help you figure out those steps in which to help build that relationship. If you're on a consulting project or if you're building something for work. So the overall we'll be talking about how we come into a new place or the existing place you work, looking at what they do, talking to the people who will use the database you'll be building, all in the vein of trying to figure out how to build it. So there's a participant guide in the book. There's a very formal process documented on performing interviews. As I've said before, I am not an academic, and therefore I take things a lot lighter-hearted than some people do. And I think it's going to go the same for what's in the book. The general idea, what they're going for is when you talk to someone trying to figure out what they do or how they use data or what data they need to do their job, you are a facilitator for a process. The people participating in that process are the participants. So first and foremost, it's always good to talk to people about what you're doing. Straightforward. Hey, I need to talk to you today about your day-to-day job and how you use your paper notebooks, how you use, what do you do, who do you interact with, just kind of getting that context of what someone's doing. And so when you really do this, it doesn't have to be a formal thing. But the guidelines here are important because it puts people at ease. So telling someone why you're talking to them sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people don't do it. I am constantly in meetings where I don't get context of why I'm in that meeting, the context for the process. I don't get information on why I'm in that meeting. So as a participant in this kind of meeting, it can be very, very frustrating when you don't know why you're there and you're just being polite and showing up. So context is important. Let them know why they're there. Let other people know why they're there. If you're the mediator and you need someone to take notes, have someone take notes. If you have a support staff, let the participants know why everybody's there. And most importantly, be polite, which I laughed when that was in the meeting. But a lot of times, or when I was reading in the book, but I think a lot of times we forget to be polite. And the example in the book talks about you, me, us technical folks coming in as the consultant. And if you've ever been on the receiving side of a consultant, they can very often come across as arrogant, or they don't want to be there, or you're wasting their time, or they give that vibe, whether they feel it or not. And so, again, I laughed at being polite in the book, but it's very, very, it's applicable. So when you do meetings like this, when you go in and you talk to someone to figure out what's happening, that relationship is important. And if the main reason is you want to get somebody comfortable, you want to get somebody to trust you. And so if they're not comfortable, they won't want to be there, and they want to try to get out as soon as possible. And so keeping people comfortable is important, whether that's a comfortable seat, comfortable temperature in the room. These are the kind of things that we need to think about when we are performing an interview like this. One of my first jobs where I was building a system from scratch, I worked for an insurance company here in Richmond, and the folks that I was interviewing through a process very similar to this, they were the business folks. They were underwriters who were trying to figure out how much to charge a customer. They were the sales managers who were trying to get new business, and frankly, when they were in a meeting like this, they weren't getting new business, and it wasn't their primary job. And so if they were uncomfortable being in a room with me and a team, you wouldn't get good answers out of them. When you talk to groups like this, keeping things small helps that comfort level. The more people that are there, the more chaotic it can be. And so limiting the number of folks you have in a room can help you get the information. When we go into most jobs, there are people who do the work, and there are people who manage those who do the work. They have very different expectations of systems and databases that we build. People who are doing the work tend not to care about dashboards and monthly reports and anything that doesn't affect the work they have to get done today. And so it's really important to separate the two types of folks to get their different requirements. Managers might be looking at the productivity of their teams. They might be looking at the profitability of their teams. Where the person who's doing, they may be curious what their next door neighbors, how profitable they are, but their primary goal is making sure that they can accomplish the tasks that they have to accomplish. Another point is being prepared. Be prepared with the list of questions. Be prepared with your introduction. Be prepared with the expected outcome. Again, why you're talking to the person you're talking to and what you want from them. And if you're not good at taking notes like me, find somebody who is. Does this interaction time, does this sound super basic, or do you think it might be helpful? And I'm okay with either answer.
It's what I do every day with our clients at VCU.
So give me feedback then. The commentary so far. Any anecdotes or stories to back it up?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just mentioned the questionnaire, like when we do the interviews with different actually the employees or the managers, and we should interview them. I used to be in a project like that. Like I wasn't actually working on it, but I used to be amongst them, and there was something like there was conflict between different perspectives and opinions about how things should be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder, normally, and to your advice, what sort of questions or what sort of aspects we should put in the questionnaire to ask the employees, like the business unit owners or the managers?
Yeah, and so those are three different categories of people, right? Employees are there to do a task. Their managers are there to make sure they do a task. And the division managers, or whatever you use, business owners, they're there to make sure the entire company is working successfully. And so you have the sometimes it feels like competing priorities or conflicting requirements from those different folks. Our job is to make sure we can accomplish them all. So the thing that I have found causes that conflict the most, two things that come right to mind. The first is you need to figure out when someone is doing a task. It's always good to figure out how they do it today and talk to them about how they might be able to do it better tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Correct. Yes, it does make sense because we were working on the optimization problem, like well, how can we streamline the process and to make sure that we can increase the productivities and performance and everything like that. But the thing is when we sit down with everybody and they seem to have different ideas about their particular areas and particular departments, they seem to prioritize whatever they were doing. So there was a bottleneck as well. It's just kind of like when we had conflict,
Mm-hmm.
we had to make sure that we valued our employees' opinions fairly and equally.
Yep.
So in that terms, we did talk with them, but they just gave us really different ideas, and we really didn't know what we should put in the database or what we should leave out actually.
Yeah, and I think the phrase you said that I want to jump on is when you got them all in a room. So I think the separation of the different tasks is key to figure out the process. So you can't improve a process unless you know what that process is. And so there's the phase of analysis where you're figuring out what they do today. Then there's the phase of them saying, giving you the ideas of what they can do better. Then there's your phase of taking that and figuring out your solution. So the other part that regularly causes conflict, and I've trained my folks at work well, is I'm the tech person. Don't tell me how to do something, right? Don't tell me what database tables to make. Don't tell me what the screen flow should look like necessarily. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish, right? Tell me the goal you want. If your goal is 10% productivity, 7% fewer clicks, tell me what you want the outcome to be, and my technical expertise will help us get there. So that's not to say it's a completely isolated process. It's absolutely a collaborative process. But if you get the how do we do things out of business people's heads, then they can start thinking about what their real desire is and what their real goals are when they're not limited to how to make it happen. So,
That makes sense.
and there's always conflict. I mean, there are competing priorities. There are my needs are bigger than their needs. That's just a part of life.
Yes, that's how we used to handle different projects at our company, and they were kind of competing with each other. We just tried to convince each department because we really wanted to keep the peace and the collaboration among departments, but it was hard.
Yeah,
was hard.
it is hard, and that is going back to the very beginning. It's all about relationships, and if they don't know you, then they're just going to fight with their neighbor. But if both parties or all 3, 4, 12 parties trust you, and you have the ability to influence them to say, "Tell me what you want. I'll tell you how we do it." That relationship builds trust to help you with that goal. Great.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you very
questions. Absolutely.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
I have so I've done a few freelance projects, and that is the key. It's finding those whoever the key stakeholders are, and then helping them to become the project champions, and in the process, just as quickly as possible, making sure everybody understands you're all on the same team.
Yep.
And then right afterwards, getting them that first iteration as quickly as possible, so that they can pick it apart and you're going in the right direction, or what you need to tweak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that rapid development or rapid release modify cycle is very important um, when you're getting that feedback. Otherwise, you'll go off for 10 months, come back with a solution that nobody likes. Yeah,
Right.
great points. All right, so for our case study, we'll dig into some details tonight, but not all the details. Mike's Bikes is a local bike shop located in a small suburb called Green Lake. This is directly out of your book. I don't come up with stuff. I'm not creative. The business is growing, and the owner is using paper to track sales. Pre-printed forms for sales, paper for employees and vendor information, customer information on index cards, and a spreadsheet for inventory. We are the consultants that were hired to fix everything. This is exactly the type of freelance work you might get if you go out on your own. This is exactly the kind of work that your parents' best friend who owns a little retail store, these are the challenges they're going to have. This is kind of extreme. I think the book was probably written a while ago, but this is absolutely still how a lot of businesses are run today. My parents owned a retail business for probably 15 years, and when they first started, it was very much like this. Everything was on paper. Everything was in the Rolodex. They had the 3-layer, I don't know what they're called, carbon copy printer things still working everywhere. And so this example, it really resonates to how I helped them with a lot of their technical issues, 20 years ago. And so I like the example in the book. It's pretty fun. And I like riding a bike, so it's definitely good there too. So this is, imagine going to work one day as a consultant, and this is a situation you work in. So where do you start? You learn how to type the word provide better. That's what I would do. So this is I'm assigning reading at the end of tonight. If you haven't read this chapter in the book, I really recommend it. First, because I don't want to just read 20 pages out of the book to you guys, because you'd be really, really bored, probably more bored than you are now. But there's a lot of good information in here talking about purpose statements, figuring out why the company exists. Not really a mission statement, but like, why do they exist and what do they want accomplished with this technology? So this is the kind of thing you would work with the owner of this small business to figure out. And in the end, at Mike's Bikes, they want to provide a wide array. To provide a wide array of bicycle products and bicycle-related services to their customers. They have a lot of great customers, the greatest, and regular ones too. They're our biggest asset. So looking at that as a purpose statement, does anything jump out as noteworthy? I'll say that, good or bad, noteworthy. Like reading that statement, what do you feel?
The wide array of bicycle products could relate to different types of product tables, or you have different types of products within a single table.
You are 40 pages ahead of me. No, don't talk about technology. Good answers, but too soon.
Different type of bicycles which they are dealing, and different type of services which they are handling currently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they want to have a bit of future, how to improve on that.
Okay. Do you feel like they're in a good place? Is he excited to invest in his company?
I think it's a they are somewhere in the mid-sized company, I feel. But at the same time, maybe because of their products and services, they have a lot of customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're excited to invest in the company.
Yeah, I think so too.
other customers.
I think so too. The thing that I like and I think is key here is there is no mention of technology. Right? My purpose is not to build a new database to store my data better. My purpose or my why am I here, is to serve my customers. I have great customers and I want to offer them all these services and products that I can. All because I want to serve my customer. So that resonated, and I think finding out why people are doing what they're doing helps us understand how we can help that. So it's not just a matter of jumping in and saying, well, here's a Postgres database, I'll run it in AWS and RDS, and you can connect your Access sheets to it. That's not the purpose of what we do. That's how we do what we do. But the purpose is really to solve this problem and help their customers with their bicycling needs. So then we start talking more about goals. So why is this company owner hiring us? We technical consultants are not cheap. Why would a small, mid-sized local retailer invest thousands of dollars on a technical solution?
To compete with larger companies.
Yep. That's a very, very good reason. What do they need to do? I mean, there's some examples on the page, but like, what does technology enable, or what do they have to do enable to compete?
Need to cut
Well, I think
costs.
they'd be able to like spend more time actually selling or like increase and
By increasing point of sale stations, we can basically they would, as you said, focus on the sales as opposed to keeping track of the inventory, keeping track of the customers. That way we have a database that keeps track of all of that and solidifies the foundation for the business.
Yeah, so
There's two bullets there about customers. Everything else is just one bullet. So their primary focus seems to be that they want to grow their customer base and better understand their customers, and then they can deliver the right inventory based on that data that they get from their customers.
mm-hmm. Why do we as a small business, y'all probably know this way better than I do because you're businessy majors, why is a sales history and sales and inventory important?
Like knowing preferences of customers, you will know what is most required. So you will increase, for example, the stock instead of the others.
Yeah, and there's a word that starts with F. Forecasting. That I'm making that word up. No, I'm not. But forecasting what your inventory needs are going to be based on historical sales. Absolutely.
To analyze purchasing behaviors.
Yeah. Why is complete customer information important?
so you have like the right addresses to send, promotions and stuff like that.
Yep. Sales and marketing. Absolutely. Your existing customers are your best customer base. Supplier information, you know who owes you money. You know how much money you owe them. Employee information, you file your taxes right. So like, these again are the goals. They're not how do we accomplish it. So I need to know my inventory, but you tell me later how to know my inventory. I need to know my employee information so I can pay taxes. You as a consultant tell me how we're going to maintain employee information and taxes. So going from that purpose of the company, the purpose of why they hired you in the first place, into some not measurable goals. These aren't measurable yet. But to more concrete, here are areas that the owner who gave us these goals thinks is important enough that will be kind of high level priorities for our engagement. So where do you start? You start with today. What do things look like today? And these are the kind of questions that we start getting into with the employees of this company. These are the questions we ask the business person in our insurance company when they come into the room with us. What data do you collect today? How do you collect that data? In our bike shop, if it's customer information, they're putting it on a 3x5 card and putting it in their Rolodex. That's great. They've got 3x5 cards with their customer data on it. They're used to that process of collecting customer data. That's a really good thing. Sales, they have sales sheets. They're pre-printed forms according to the first slide on Mike's Bikes. Those pre-printed forms have data on them. It'll probably have a name and taxes and values and items and all these things. So going through that day-to-day, those day-to-day activities of the employees of this company starts to put us in the direction of figuring out what data we need to track. So what's the difference between data and information? Anyone want to give me a good answer?
Data is what you send to a database, and the information is what you retrieve from a database.
So I saw that answer a couple of times, and I'll give you credit for it, but it's not totally the spirit of what I think I'm going for.
Information is processed data.
Yeah, information is insights. Information is data in context. It's not so the nitpicky is not just how you retrieve data, but it's what does that data mean? So
Anything.
Go on.
Anything you store is the data.
Yep. The data is the individual points of data that you store. Exactly. And information is making sense of that or giving context to that. And so the last three bullets on here are not how do we collect that data, not how do we really make, information meaning we know this is a product ID, but how do we get value out of that information that we're storing? So are these reports, are these things that get printed out daily for the sales manager to look at? Are these reports for the CEO for monthly or CEO and CFO or the hired accountant for profitability and cash flow analysis? Are these reports for investors? In our startup fundraising world, these kind of reports get put into presentations and pitch decks, and we go and we talk to people in the Shark Tank, and we try to get them to give us money. Nobody wants to give us money if we're not profitable or if we don't have a path to profitability, unless you're a .com company still. But so these are different medias, yeah. That this information can be presented, and websites is a great example too. We're talking here about a small business. What would be on the website? Would our sales and marketing data be on our website?
No.
Probably not.
No.
Not on the front end unless there's a back end.
Well, sure. But on our public facing retail website for mikesbikes.com, what kind of data would be what information would we be presenting there?
Price and cost, or price.
Yeah, price, inventory. Yeah, exactly. So now we're starting to see the different use cases and the different use of our data. Now we're starting to get into some things that should trigger ideas for us about protecting some data. Showing only certain data to our website, showing only certain data to our CFO, and no one else gets to see that data. So from the 2 weeks we've had class, we can start thinking about, are these tables, are these views in our database, are they different user accesses to tables, which we haven't talked about, but this is now we can start in that process of when we start proposing a technical approach, these are the things that kind of go into it. We talked about interviewing earlier. this is brought up again in the book, in this case study from Mike's Bikes, to talk about how are the people in the company gathering data. So they had examples of the paper forms that they're filling out. They had examples of the note cards with customer information on it. So these are how we're collecting data today. And when we build software, we might want to start thinking about how we can make our software kind of feel like what they do today. So it's not only about what is the perfect optimal way of collecting data. There's the human side of things where nobody likes change. Just in general, people hate change, and so we may have a idea for it to be super perfect, and we may give that an option. But another option we might show is, here's kind of a low touch, low change way of starting to get into a technical world for your folks in the company. So it's how are they collecting data? How are they using the data in their day-to-day job? So if we're talking to a sales guy, how do you use inventory numbers? Do you go look at the piece of paper on the wall and say, oh, the Trek B9000, we have 2 in stock, or we have 12 of these in stock, I probably want to sell those. So do they use it to influence what they're selling? Do they use it just to say, yes, we have it in stock? Do they use it to give discounts? These are the kind of questions you need to figure out. Any thoughts? Thumbs up? Thumbs up. Thank you. Cool. And then some of us have jumped ahead to this already. I'm definitely paraphrasing what they talk in the book. But the way I look at it is we start to find our nouns. So the nouns in the conversations that could be database tables, that could be relationships, that could be users and access roles. So far, the nouns we've kind of thrown around are salespeople, CFO, president, website, inventory, bikes, services. So these kind of nouns help us identify what we would store in our database. Have I forgotten any nouns in our examples? Sorry, Jess, you're breaking up.
Employee.
Employee, yep.
Yeah.
Store locations.
Stores, location, perfect, yep. Models of bikes. Yeah, those are the kind of nouns that we would typically find in a case study like this, or in our consulting opportunity with the local retailer. Chapter 6 had a ton of information, and so that was it. That's all we're going to talk about tonight, unless you have thoughts and questions. But chapter 4, 5, and 6 in the book, I said by Thursday, but whatever. Take your time to read them over the next couple of days. It's more context behind what we talked about tonight without my commentary. But it has a lot of depending on how much you like process. Business majors, you might like process more than I do. There's a lot of good process stuff in there, which you can implement as an actual process for a consulting gig like this. Or you can just kind of take his guidelines to say, okay, I'm going to sit down in a room and I'm going to talk to people, but I know I probably only want to talk to the sales folks first. Then I'll talk to the sales managers. Then I'll talk to the finance guy, instead of pulling them all in a room. Right? So you can use that as kind of your guideline. And I'm never going to quiz you on like this process stuff like to the T as in this book. If I did anything, it would be, no, I probably won't quiz on anything about this. But this is the part of the job that technical folks tend to overlook. Right? We want to jump in and we want to say, here's a database. But the business major side of things, this is more along the lines of what a lot of you will do for the next 15 years, whether you call it process management or product management or business analysis, or any of those kind of functions. This work is key to that job function. Any questions?
I'm sorry, Professor.
Yeah.
You said we have to find nouns. Is it like first step to construct the database or what?
I think so.
What is the purpose behind that?
It's so the way I think about it, the nouns when we talk about modeling our data or modeling our database, there are lots of things that we have to consider. So starting at the bottom, we need to know what data we store. And in a relational database, data is stored in tables, right? And a table represents something, whether it's a sale or a bike or a employee or like those kind of things are, nouns. You are describing a thing. And another layer is the relationships between those things. So sales of a bike, sales of a service, those kind of, it's all building on top of those foundational nouns. Then if we think about the user or the consumption of this data, it's another angle where we think about roles and people summarized as a noun, a CFO, a data analyst, a salesperson. They're just the different ways of thinking about the concepts that we will end up constructing using nouns. I forget how the book actually said it. My book's downstairs, but I don't remember if I paraphrased nouns or if I took nouns from them, but that's the way I've thought about database modeling forever. It's the same as object-oriented programming modeling. It's all around nouns. Good question. That it?
Yep.
All right, well, thank you. I hope everyone has a fantastic evening, and I will...
Thank you as well.
Thank you. I will see y'all